From Los Angeles to Dallas to Omaha to your city to your doorstep. Welcome to Law and Society. Please subscribe. We're going to talk today about Donald Trump's police state. And it is my fifth warning, I believe. We are now seeing Donald Trump's police state that he intends to implement unfolding in cities around the country. And we're watching the protests happening all around the country as well. Right before I got on to talk to you, there were pictures of protests, reports of protests in Chicago. Los Angeles mayor has issued a curfew for Los Angeles because within the protests, there are insiders who act out and become violent. And it is completely right for the governor, Newsom, and the mayor to say that those who commit crimes, those who are violent and destructive, will be held accountable. But on the other hand, peaceful protest, mass peaceful protest, like it's planned for June 14th, No King's Day, it is necessary. But it is also necessary to remember that those protests have to be peaceful. I want to remind you again, and I'm not going to read you portions from it anymore because I did in the previous videos and they were long, and I'm just going to give you the references. In the description box, there are those two police state orders from April 28th. I have been warning from the time that I read those orders about Donald Trump's police state. And now we are seeing it unfold. There are, and as I pointed out while I was in the previous videos, that, he's ordering DHS, DOD, and DOJ to come up with ways in which federal forces can encroach on state authority and state and local authorities to usurp them and illegally detain and arrest people from those cities and states. Now, people are talking about the Insurrection Act, people are talking about the Posse Comitatus Act, people are talking about Title 10, USC Code 12406. And what I'm saying to you, and they're talking about martial law, which cannot happen without Congress. What I'm telling you is that Donald Trump instructed his Department of Justice, Department of Defense, and Department of Homeland Security to come up with ways in which they can, in ways they can bypass even invoking Insurrection Act, Posse Comitatus Act, or imposing martial law to go out and impose the police state. They don't want to take this to court and question the law that is being used because, Posse Comitatus pretty much says that you cannot have a Posse Comitatus, meaning you cannot have people come in and try to help you in federal forces into states unless there's authorization by Congress or stated by Constitution. So that kind of undoes the effect of it. Anyway. But then you have the Insurrection Act, which requires certain conditions. And that's why it requires insurrection, it requires invasion, it requires rebellion, one of those things, or all of them, in order to be activated. So in a sense, Donald Trump, by not even invoking those powers, he's going into local sanctuary jurisdictions, like he said in his April 28th executive orders, he's going in there and quickly moving before you can go to the courts, before states can go to the courts, and inciting not just protest, but inciting violence that often comes alongside with these protests if they are spur of the moment, if they are spontaneous, and because you cannot, it's not organized mass protest. It is protests incited by fear, where ICE agents are going in, raiding and breaking up families and communities. And those are spontaneous protests where people do not know the rules of peaceful protest, and where you act out in ways which is destruction of property, which is confronting the law enforcement. No, you don't do that. You run parallel to the law enforcement. Yeah, law enforcement is blocking you from going somewhere. You yell over them, but you don't physically get in their way. And there are, and I've posted about it, there are rules about always avoid violence, move away from anything that is insightful. Always film what's happening, have your phones charged, take drinking water with you, and stay together with people that you know. Build a community, and when you go out to protest, stay in that group. And as the group coalesces with other groups, the masses get bigger and bigger. But the understanding of remaining, very, very condensed and very deliberate in what the message is, you don't even confront the police, but you voice your protest. If you sit down somewhere and don't want to get up and the police have to arrest you and move you out, that is civil disobedience. That is part of peaceful protest. Remember, if you're standing somewhere and just speaking and there's police charging at you and they are beating you, that is you performing protest when you decide not to hit back, but also not to move. Because that gives permission to be brave. And it is a difficult time. And I want to remind you that you have your rights. You have your right to privacy. You have right to due process of law. In the United States, if you are a person in the United States, not just a citizen, you have a right to due process of law. You have a right against unreasonable searches and seizures. They need a warrant. You have a right to an attorney. You have a right to face your accuser in a court of law. And we have already crossed so much of this, and we are so far from normal that we have to come back to the core of our powers as a collective. And that power rests in the Constitution's given right in the First Amendment of peaceful protest. So channel your rage into organized protesting, peaceful protesting. And please go and read the language of the police state orders from April 28th. And I keep saying that over and over again because it will give you a better understanding of how and why Donald Trump's different departments are moving in coordination to test and see which policies or which laws work. He pulled out this 10 U.S.C. 12406, and he is under that he's allowed to, call the federalized the National Guard, the state militia, but it requires the governor's consent, and he does not have the consent of Governor Newsom. I don't know if he'll have the consent of the governor of Nebraska. I don't know if he's going to have the consent of the governor of Texas. But also remember that they're going into city jurisdictions, and those depend on the consent of nobody except for the people who are peacefully protesting. If the governor says, yeah, you can take the National Guard there, local authorities don't have the power to stop the National Guard. So in smaller communities, it is even more important to remain peaceful and to voice your protest and amplify your protest through social media and share your story as part of the bigger picture. With that said, thank you so much. I have talked long enough. I hope that you always stay safe, remain vigilant, love thy neighbor instead of pointing fingers, find common ground where you can, and never ever reach for violence. Channel your rage into productive, coordinated, condensed mass movement and a call for that mass movement. Thank you so much for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe. That is the mantra of YouTube, and I have to get better at it because evidently it is important for people to, remember to do that. Anyway, please do. If you like, if you don't like, you don't like. I get all kinds of comments, and I appreciate the great, amazing ones that I can engage with, and even the ones that are, speaking against me or calling me names. Thank you for the interaction. With that said, thank you. Take care. Bye.